I've been looking forward to doing this interview as much as I've looked forward to doing any interview. This is Dennis Deninger, longtime ESPN producer, longtime Syracuse University professor. That's where we met. I took several of your classes, including one on the Super Bowl.
The Super Bowl and Society class, which we started 14 years ago.
Wow.
And you will study a lot of things in college that have less than $40 billion a year impact. In fact, the economic impact now of the Super Bowl is larger than the gross domestic product of a lot of countries. So it's got a major impact, and that's why we study it. And we took a look at it in an academic form as to culturally, politically, socially, how it's impacted America. The reason for writing this book is that there isn't any other book. Most of the Super Bowl books are about the dynasties of the Super Bowl, the greatest players. But there isn't anything about how it's affected America. And this is the first one.
Well, you helped me segue. So let's talk about this book. That's the reason why you're here, Dennis. Feels so weird calling you Dennis. I called this man Professor Deninger for years. I'm not going to start calling you Dennis. Okay. But the book is called The Football Game That Changed America, How the NFL Created a National Holiday. It should be a national holiday, no?
You know what?
We should have off on Mondays after the Super Bowl.
And there is cleverly a design. When the NFL goes to their 18-game season, the Super Bowl will be pushed one more weekend deep into February, which will fall on President's Day weekend every year. Ooh. And a lot of people get that Monday. Not everybody. You and I don't get that Monday off, President's Day. But a lot of people do, and that will become the automatic holiday following the Super Bowl. So they didn't have to go to, and you know what? The NFL would probably be the most adverse to going to a national holiday, because if you were to call it Super Bowl Day or Super Bowl Sunday or whatever, then that takes the name Super Bowl into the public domain. And the NFL guards that brand very carefully. You can't use Super Bowl in advertising if you're not an official sponsor and all the rest of that. So it's not going to be an official holiday, but you know what? In so many ways, it's one of these holidays. It's people get together for a common purpose. There's partying. There's mass consumption of food and beverages, right? And it's something that brings Americans together, which is a great thing in our society today, because there are so many things that take people apart.
I think we should start a petition. We should have off on Mondays after the Super Bowl.
There have been a few petitions, and they've fallen a little short.
Yeah, but we have some pull.
You know what? All right, we could start it here in Connecticut.
What prompted you to write this book?
Well, one of the things is that I came across so many great stories, and doing interviews with, for example, the person who hired me, God bless him, at ESPN way back when, was named Bill Fitz, F-I-T-T-S. And Bill was CBS executive producer of Super Bowl I and 2, 4, 6, and 8 before he came over to ESPN. And he had some wonderful stories about the mass confusion and all the crazy things that happened, and what Pete Rozelle wanted. And they only had 6 weeks, basically, to plan for the Super Bowl, because it wasn't approved until November 1st. They needed a congressional approval to have it fall under the antitrust exemption for TV contracts. It gets a little bit deep there. It's explained in the book. But there was so little time to prepare. And one of the great things is Super Bowl I, imagine this, was not a sellout. They were selling tickets for $6, $10, and $12. There were 30,000 empty seats in the LA Coliseum.
And it was on 2 different channels, right?
Yes. And that was...
I remember something from your class.
You did really well in that class.
Well, B's get degrees.
Yes, it was. It was on the... It was on NBC and CBS, because NBC was carrying the AFL games and CBS was carrying the NFL games. And they both wanted to have this championship. So Pete Rozelle said, hey, we're giving you more content, so we're going to charge you a little bit more. Now, it's in the book how much they got charged, right? You got to read the book. But anyway, they both ponied up some money, and then it was on, and then they're both doing cross-promotion. Imagine today if Fox Network, and CBS were both promoting an event together, it would get double the promotion. So it was brilliant, because when it aired, first time ever, it was the most watched sporting event in the history of America. First time out.
If someone's asking me, what are significant historical moments that helped shape the Super Bowl as we watch it today? No one's asking me that question. But my answer, I think, would start with two things. The New York Jets winning and the Michael Jackson halftime show.
Major.
Am I on the right track?
Yes, yes. Huge milestones in the history of the Super Bowl. The reason that Joe Namath and the New York Jets are so significant is that the first two Super Bowls were won handily by the Green Bay Packers. So by the third one, interest was waning. The television ratings actually dropped for Super Bowl because the Jets were an 18-point underdog. And since the Packers had beaten the Raiders in Super Bowl II and the Chiefs in Super Bowl I so handily, people figured, well, this is like a major league team playing a minor league team. So why should we watch? And a couple days before that Super Bowl, there was a major turning point that could have flipped the Super Bowl upside down. You got to read the book.
Right.
But needless to say, once the Jets and the AFL team won, then there was no more talk of we should change this. It's going forward. So that was a huge turning point. And you mentioned Michael Jackson.
Right.
And the lesson with the Michael Jackson halftime is before that, the NFL was kind of stuck in what they thought of as the culture of the past. They were kind of still stuck in the days of the Ed Sullivan Show and variety shows. And so they had Broadway talent and they had marching bands. And this is an era in which Madonna and Michael Jackson and all these great bands are out. And that's what people are listening to. And yet the NFL is giving you all of this yesterday's entertainment today.
Right.
And they wound up with the Fox network in its very early days pulled the fast one on the NFL, and they cut the viewership of the halftime by 25 million people. That's also in the book as to how they did that. Well, the NFL was not happy with people tuning out. Can you imagine two people tuning out of the Super Bowl? It's what they did en masse. So the following year, they said, we got to get with the times. And Michael Jackson did halftime for Super Bowl in 1993, which was in the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. And ever since, halftime has been an up-to-date rock concert.
What else would you put on that list in terms of historical moments that helped shape the Super Bowl as we know it today?
You know, as you go along, there are a number of milestones. Like the first time that a commercial went past the $1 million amount. And after it went to $1 million a unit, then it kept soaring northward. You know, the commercials for the most recent Super Bowl were around $7 million. And another key interesting point in the book is that no two commercials in any Super Bowl are priced the same. And I explain why that's the case. But so everybody buys at a different time, and they buy a certain number of them, whatever. That was a real milestone. You have to say the way that the NFL and the Super Bowl treated the Super Bowl that happened after 9/11. The NFL season was delayed by a week. 9/11 happened right at the time that the NFL games had been starting. The Super Bowl was a week later, and it was in New Orleans. And U2 did the halftime show, and it was breathtaking, and it was also poignant, and it was renewing this faith in the American spirit, all of these things. And that really, I think, moved the Super Bowl and the NFL up a notch. And each time the Super Bowl has gone higher and higher in ratings. And I think one of the big turning points was after President Trump in the late 2010s, I think it was 2017, was throw the bum off the field, and he was having there was Colin Kaepernick kind of this backlash, and the ratings actually dipped. The ratings for the Super Bowl dipped, and that's okay. All right, what's happening now? And then the country kind of coalesced again, and hey, we're not going to be taken away from what it is that we love, and that's what Americans always defend. What it is that we love, what it is that we do, what makes us American. And the following year, the Super Bowl ratings went up, and they've been on a steady climb ever since. So there are a number of these, and that's not even delving into the Pittsburgh Steelers winning four Super Bowls in the 70s, but there are some pretty important social milestones. And another one is the Super Bowl actually changed the outcome of a referendum in Arizona because of where it was located and whether or not the state was going to approve a holiday, a new national holiday down there. So the populace voted against it, and they took the Super Bowl away. And 2 years later, the populace said, the people said, maybe it's a good idea to vote for this and accept this national holiday, and we'll get a Super Bowl again.
There's a lot to unpack with this book. You should check it out. Viewer question, what's your favorite Super Bowl-related memory, and why is it when we went to Atlanta together?
Okay, well, you know what? Yes, I know who that viewer was. It was wonderful. I've been teaching this Super Bowl course for about maybe 7 or 8 years. And it occurred to me, you know what? We have the opportunity, Syracuse University, and I had been credentialed for the Super Bowl starting at Super Bowl 40, which was the one held back in Detroit, the last one in Detroit, which was a great event. It was chilly, but it was a great event. And so I could get credentials through the NFL. And I said, you know what? We have these people who cover radio and do TV for Citrus TV on campus and all the rest. Well, we should think about maybe having a contingent go to the Super Bowl, and I would do the lecture that week from the site of the Super Bowl. And you helped me gather a couple other students because you were the prime mover. You've always been a prime mover in your life, it appears.
My gym teacher used to say.
We got a couple other students. One of them is Drew Carter, who's now the voice of the Boston Celtics on TV, right? And Jackson Agello, who's now he is doing podcasts with ESPN Radio, right? So this intrepid three, we got you credentialed and went down for Radio Row, and that was amazing because I think at the end of the week we had something like 40 or 50 luminaries that you guys had interviewed. You were doing 3 hours of radio in the morning and 3 hours of live radio in the afternoon and doing one TV hit every day. And it was really exciting to be there with students and not just kind of on my own or with when I started doing the Super Bowl, I was head of production for ESPN Digital and we were covering it for ESPN.com, and I was working with John Clayton, and that was pretty cool. But, he had long since not been a student, rest his soul.
Isn't it amazing how that's continued?
Yes.
We're both gone.
Yeah, yes.
And it's still going.
Yeah. Well,
it's grown.
I'm going to continue teaching the class, and I did go to the Super Bowl in Las Vegas. Who would not go to the Super Bowl in Las Vegas? I wanted to see that event. And we had 8 students there this year, 6 Newhouse students, and 2 sport management analytics students who are doing a whole different survey of the impact of the gambling on the Super Bowl in Las Vegas. So we had them meeting with a lot of the gambling representatives and a number of Syracuse University alums who are working with these sports books in Las Vegas. So it really has burgeoned. And it is a great cauldron, the Super Bowl is, for learning about American media, American economy, American society and culture, and sports.
This section of the interview is for all the Syracuse people watching. I do want to get back to the book and talk about the last chapter because it's fascinating. You talk about the challenges that the NFL faces as, I think the last chapter is called Approaching Super Bowl 100.
Right, the drive to Super Bowl 100. Yes.
Right.
Super Bowl C, that's right.
What are the challenges the NFL faces? Because, frankly, it seems like the Super Bowl is untouchable and unmatched compared to anything else on TV.
Well, if you think about it, we're talking 41 years from now. Right. 41 years from now in 2066. So 41 years from this Super Bowl 59 will be Super Bowl 100. Who knows where it will be. And so 41 years ago, the telestrator was 1 year old. And all of the things that we have come to see as normal, as regular, for the Super Bowl have been introduced. Back then, the pregame show was about an hour and a half. Now the pregame show is a week long, So there are a lot of changes and who knows how the NFL and the Super Bowl will cope with all of the technological changes that lie ahead. And my projection is that they'll do pretty well, and as technology changes, creative people then follow. When ESPN was founded in 1979, it would not have been founded if there weren't geosynchronous satellites orbiting the Earth that you could bounce communications signals off of. There wouldn't have been an ESPN. There wouldn't have been a lot of these networks, right? Now, they don't need a satellite. They can use fiber, right? They can use the internet. Well, the internet came along in the 1990s, right? So all of these changes post-date 41 years ago. So who knows where we will be 41 years from now? And I do some speculation as to what kind of entertainment might it change to, and the way that they might use digital technology for seats, and who's going to be in what seat, and who can mirror that seat somewhere else in the world, and all of the different things that you could add to this. And what I'd love to see is about 10 different channels, all streaming different Super Bowl feeds. And one of the ones that I really want to have happen, and hopefully between now and 41 years from now, it will. You may still be, you'll still be a sports director somewhere, right?
Sure.
Okay, good.
You have a job for me?
I'm not so sure where I will be 41 years from now, but you're in good shape.
Writing more books.
Writing books, that would be a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would love to see a channel that has all the great audio that you now get in an NFL Films, one of these recorded shows, and they've got a microphone on different players, and you can hear the coaches talking to players, and you can hear conversations out on the field. I would love to hear that live. Now, the reason you don't hear it live now is that the fear that you might hear some obscenities, some crude language may be heard. Well, you call it the Crude Language Channel, and you just put it out there,
I'd watch that.
Sure, right. But, to get that feeling of being right there on the field, and who knows what kind of camera coverage there will be with miniature cameras and digital feeds from all over the place, I think it's going to be wonderful. And what's important will be, the challenge will be how well the NFL handles these changes, and do they ride with them, or do they fall behind like they fell behind with entertainment, as I mentioned, and they're giving entertainment variety shows when the world is listening to Michael Jackson and Madonna. So I think that they'll do a pretty good job of staying with the curve, and maybe sometimes ahead of the curve.
So in 41 years, you're going to have a sequel to this book about Super Bowl 100, and I'll be a broadcaster on the Crude Language Channel.
There you
CLC. The book is called The Football Game That Changed America, How the NFL Created a National Holiday. It's available for purchase now on Amazon.
Yes.
So go check it out. This man, one of the most influential people in my life. Go check out. I say that without hyperbole, by the way. Go check out his book. It's brilliant.
Thank you.
He's also one of the reasons I know who Gordon Lightfoot is. That's a story for a different day.
Thank you.
Go check out his book. It's available for purchase now.